What do you hope heaven looks like? Perfection and holiness is a high, high bar.
There's nothing I can do to be good enough for Him.
I can do anything I want to do as a Christian, but my wants have changed. It may take a while, but that's okay.
I think I understand the problem now.
There are certain things that we have zero tolerance for in our life.
Yeah, so just let's jump right into it. This week on the Reach Podcast. All right, everyone. I am here today with one of my good friends, Paul Hicks, our area director for Search Ministries down in Houston, Texas. And Paul, thank you so much for being back on the podcast.
Oh, man, it's great to be back again, Blaine. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And today we want to have another conversation about a conversation, which is kind of what we do here. And this time, though, we want to talk a little about a conversation where you got to actually share the gospel with somebody and invite somebody to place their trust in Christ. And we need to be ready for those moments. This is obviously a big deal, a big moment. So why don't you set up this conversation for us?
Okay. Well, Blaine, you know, what we do at Search is we earn the right to have these spiritual conversations. And eventually, by God's grace, you get to the point where the person is ready to hear, how do I connect with God? And it's at that moment that we need to be prepared, right? And so, you know, we've talked a little bit before in other podcasts about timing, right? This is something you don't want to barge your way into, right? It has to come to you and then be prepared. And so I think oftentimes, early on, I sort of rushed this conversation. You know, I wanted to get right to the point where, in fact, one of our colleagues, Bill Crafson, has often talked about people discovering this truth. It's not what you say to them, it's what they catch, right? And so, any rate, I'm going to describe a conversation that I had recently where I got to walk through this, and I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah, so just let's jump right into it.
Okay, so any rate, we get to the point in the guy with my friend, and I'm just going to call him Bill.
Okay.
Right? And so Bill was ready, I think, to hear how you connect with God. And so I always ask permission in, Blaine. I think it's really sort of arrogant to just voice your opinion on somebody or assume something. It always goes something like, hey, Bill, we've had a lot of conversations, and I know that you believe in God, but I think you have a lot of confusion about how you connect with God. Is that something that you'd like to talk about? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, first of all, let me just, we often talk about just how good do you have to be with God. So let me ask you a question, Bill. What do you hope heaven looks like? Do you hope heaven is excellent, or do you hope heaven is your vision of heaven is it's just pretty good? Right. I think we all want it to be very good. Yeah. Right? Excellent.
Good as it can be.
Good as it can be. And yet, when I think of myself, I often think, well, I feel like I've been good enough to be in God's presence. When the fact is I'm not even pleased with me. How can I be good enough to be in God's presence? Right?
Yeah.
If heaven is going to be this place that's excellent, it needs to maintain excellence. Right? And so the fact is God maintains excellence by having a very high requirement. Would it surprise you that his requirement is that we be perfect and holy?
And when you say this to Bill or really to anybody, are they surprised?
Yeah, they're always surprised. And I say, that sounds unrealistic, doesn't it? I said, but, think about that a little bit. We have certain standards like that. What if I called you, Bill, and I said to you, hey, I've just tested positive to COVID. My wife doesn't want me in the house. Can I come stay at your house? Now, Bill, you wouldn't be interested in having me, right? You
No.
have a very high standard. I don't want any COVID in my house, right? My wife, would I be okay if she just had an affair every now and then?
Yeah, just every once in a while.
No. We have a very high standard. I have no affairs and you have no affairs. We are devoted to each other. So there are certain things that we have zero tolerance for in our life. And yet then when we consider God looking at me, all of a sudden we lower the standards. Well, is it even logical that God's standards would be lower than my standards? No. Right? Now, we have one of two choices, Bill. We either have to live a perfect life or we have to admit that we don't have a perfect life and we need some attention, right? And so the first step in when I said that we must be perfect, that is a very, very important step, because step one in connecting with God is realizing I've got a big trouble. I've got a problem here.
Yeah.
Right? I don't meet God's standards. And we are going to have to do something about it.
And then, an important thing too is you don't want to rush by this. So you can't just throw that out and keep moving on down the road assuming they've understood. You want to make sure that whoever you're talking to, they understand the severity of the problem, and we're not giving them a solution to something that they don't even realize is a problem.
That's an excellent point. And usually you use some examples, and I always use myself. I don't ever want to say, hey, Bill, what are some of the things that you aren't proud of? No. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say, Bill, let me tell you some of the things I'm not real proud of that would prevent me from being in God's presence, like envy, like lust, like losing my temper with someone, not just the big things, but the little things that we tend to rationalize because, the person made me react that way. No, those are things that fall short of perfection.
Yeah.
So it's not just the big things like murder and those things that I haven't done, but it's the little things too, right? Perfection and holiness is a high bar, and that's what God says we must reach to be in His presence. It's not that He doesn't want us in His presence. It's that we have to be holy to be in His presence. And so that you made an excellent point is that you don't want to rush by it. You might not get through the whole thing in one conversation.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's a great point.
If you find the guy is just not sufficiently lost, right? You can't get saved until you're lost, right?
Uh-huh.
I've heard it said before, it's much harder to get someone lost than it is to save them, right? Because once you're lost and you know you have a problem, then you're open to a solution.
Yeah. And, it reminds me, like probably a year ago or so, I was having this conversation with somebody and we couldn't get past. It took a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks of talking about it before he finally went, okay, I think I understand the problem now. And so it's just an important thing to do.
I had a guy that we never did get to it. He never saw himself as lost.
Really?
It's the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
He kept saying, well, if God doesn't take me the way I am, then He's not the God that I'm looking for, and blah, blah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to explain the gospel to someone who has no interest. Right? That would be unloving. That would be pushy. Right?
Yeah. So in this scenario we're talking about, back to Bill, so let's say he gets it. I guess he does get it because we're moving on in the conversation. So then how do you present the solution to the problem?
So, Bill, I'm assuming you haven't lived the perfect life any more than I have, right? And so we have a problem that needs attention, right? And that is the whole reason why God came down to this earth in the form of a man. And he did that with one main purpose. He did a lot of good things. He modeled life for us. But God really came to earth in the form of the man named Jesus Christ to pay the price for my sins. So he came, he put on an earth suit, he lived here. He did not sin. So he was the only person qualified to die for my sins. If he had looked at a woman lustfully, or he had just made fun of one of the disciples to another disciple, just all in fun, but it was, sin.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been qualified to die for me. But he lived this perfect life, and he went to the cross, and he took the sins of the world to himself. And it says that all who believe and receive that payment and ask for this forgiveness have the right to be called children of God.
Hey everybody, I wanted to take a moment and let you know that the Reach podcast is brought to you by Search, a ministry dedicated to sharing Jesus through friendships and conversations for nearly 50 years. Learn more or get involved at searchnational.org.
That word believe is very, very important, and we need to talk about that just a little bit, Bill, right? Because we believe a lot of things, but there's a difference between an intellectual belief, just an acknowledgement of the facts, and then biblical belief, where you're actually transferring your trust to something or someone. And I've got a little story that I like to tell guys when they're ready to understand this truth, and it's about being on a light aircraft, and a friend of mine has invited me up to Colorado to go skiing, and he's got a little private plane, right? And he tells me when we're at the airport, hey, look, Jim, been checking the weather, and there's a cold front coming through there, and we're going to have to fly through this cold front, and the turbulence is going to be severe, right? And it's right on the edge of on the specifications for this aircraft. But I've been through these storms before, and I'm ready to go if you're okay to go. Now, I can believe in my head. He says he's made it before, so I believe in my head that he can make it. But if I really believe, I'm going to get on his plane, I'm going to buckle the seatbelt, and I now have transferred my trust from anything I can do to what he and this plane can do. And the minute those wheels lift off the ground, I am completely and totally dependent on what he can do. Right?
You didn't get on that plane, did you?
I would not get on that plane.
Okay.
Right. No, I'm not interested in that.
No. But that's a great illustration. And so when somebody goes, okay, what does that mean with Jesus, though? How do I get on the plane, so to speak?
So what you have to understand and trust in and truly believe is that by me believing what Jesus said, by accepting his payment for my sin, he has borne all of the consequences of my sin, death, and I am now without sin, and I am in his eyes holy, sinless. They call the scriptures refer to the believer as a saint. Now, I don't feel like Saint Paul, right? But the scriptures say I am Saint Paul because Jesus has removed my sin. Okay? That is how you enter into a relationship with God, and you become part of his family, and you become an heir to his throne. And then you spend the rest of your life learning how to be a good family member. And that's where a lot of the confusion is, Bill, is people mistake learning how to be a good family member with actually being a family member.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and part of that transferring your your trust too, to me, seems like you stop trying to earn God's love and acceptance. That's how it really does play out. You starts in your brain and kind of works its way to your heart, but you decide, I don't. There's nothing I can do to be good enough for Him. Period.
And once I sensed that Bill understood, then again, I'm always asking permission. Bill, is there any other questions? Is there anything else that's preventing you from surrendering your life to Jesus Christ and accepting what He has done for you so that you can be in His family? Is there anything? I don't want to force you. I'm not forcing you, right? This is God is inviting you into a love relationship. You either want it or you don't. And you and I are going to be friends whether you do it or don't do it. Okay? I'm just helping you. Is there anything else that would prevent you from that? And he happened to say, well, the one thing that bothers me or I'm afraid of is that of how I'm going to have to change, all these things I'm going to have to change. I'm going to, I like to go drinking with my buddies, and I like to do a lot of these things. And I just sense that, I always sense that God is not going to allow me to do those things. Right? And I said, Bill, that's a great point. I think we've all felt that. I think counting the cost is just is a sign of maturity. It shows that you're taking this serious, right? We should count the cost. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you from experience, Bill, that I can do anything I want to do as a Christian, but my wants have changed. I've grown up, right? Mm-hmm. You did a lot of things in high school and even college that now you look back and you go, well, that was childish things. I don't even do that anymore. There's a lot of things that I can do because all of my problems and sins and indiscretions have been dealt with on the cross. They've all been paid for, right? But when I start tasting the joy of an authentic relationship with the Creator of the universe, and I start fixing my eyes on the things that really matter in this world, the things that I used to do don't even get any bandwidth. I mean, they seem like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that gets to the point that, I don't know, I think it might get undersold sometimes, and I know you can't say everything all at once, but when we talk about knowing God and knowing Jesus, there's an experience to that. It's not just up here in your brain and, deciding some things or whatever. It's something happened when you say yes, when you do transfer your trust, something happens to you. And it's now we know what it is theologically. It's regeneration, new birth, indwelling of the Spirit. There's all kinds of words for it. But you go, that's a real thing that you feel that makes you different. I think you could talk to anybody who, especially if you became a believer older, like I did. It is something that really happens to you, and it does. God does from the inside out change you, but that's a journey that starts when you say yes.
You say yes, and in fact, you should always be ready to kind of tell your story. And I told Bill, and I really tell everybody kind of my story. And my story is that I grew up in a church. I never heard the gospel explained to me in any way that made sense, right? It was just a very nice place to be, really. Even though as a kid I didn't want to be there, right?
Yeah.
But we went to church. But it was an older, a guy who was a freshman in college. He was a friend, a big brother figure in my life. He lived right around the corner from me. And we used to work out in his garage pumping weights, right? And he went off to U of H, and someone explained it to him, and he made a decision to transfer his trust to God. And then he came, and he was explaining it to me in his garage. And I remember going home that night, and I got down on my knees, and I prayed to receive Jesus. I told him I know I'm not perfect, and I need your forgiveness, right? So please forgive my sins and be my Lord. It was something that simple.
Yeah.
The lights didn't flicker. I didn't just get warm and fuzzy all over, right? Now I've heard of people that they do get a warm and fuzzy, right? But I'm kind of a steady Freddy. I don't fly high or low. I mean, I don't, not a real emotional guy. Well, but I went to school the next day, and my mouth was more profane than it was the day before. I was checking out the chicks harder than I was the day before, and I go, my gosh, it didn't work. I must not have really meant it. And so I went home and I doubled down. God, I really, really believe in you, and I really, really want you to come save me, right? That probably went on 10 or 12 times really over court, because I was getting worse. I wasn't getting better. Well, now I know, after I had spent time with Search and been discipled and really understood what was happening in my life, is the Holy Spirit had come into me, and he had revealed to me my honest condition. I was blinded to it.
Yeah.
But there is a tangible proof that comes with making an authentic decision, and Christianity is the only religion in the world where you can know.
Yeah. God himself will show you for sure. And this has been really, really helpful, Paul. Thank you. I think it's been a great conversation. I want to wind up here, okay? Question we always ask. So what's the one takeaway from all of this? People leaving, they're going to do whatever they're doing after they listen to this. What do you want them to remember?
Well, I want them to remember, when you get to the point with somebody and you're ready to have this conversation, don't get in a hurry. Your heart will start beating a little faster, and maybe you'll say that, now this is what you have to say, this prayer. Saying the prayer without understanding the prayer is not inviting Jesus into your life, right? So don't be afraid to go slow and help them understand God's high standard, understand that we don't meet it, that God and God alone is the solution to the problem, and that really biblical belief is transferring this trust and this trust alone. And it may take a while, but that's okay. God's the one doing the heavy lifting, right?
Yep.
You just want to make sure there's no confusion, because I find men all the time who have said the prayer when they were younger in life and they didn't understand it, and it causes great confusion.
Sure. No, that's a great point, and a great way to end the podcast and wrap it up. So, Paul, seriously, thank you so much for being my guest. It's been an awesome conversation, and appreciate you being here.
You bet. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Reach Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That'd be a good idea. Share it with a friend and leave us a review to help others find the podcast. Now, for more resources, please visit reachothers.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you.